Each week, we like to break down stories from the three levels of government with CTV's political commentator, also dear friend of our show, Scott Reed. He's joining us live in the studio right now. Hey, Scott, good morning.
Morning, guys.
Dear friend, Scott. Nice to see you.
Dear friend, yes.
Yeah.
I think of you as dear friends also.
Yeah.
We must tea together
Yes, we shall
sometime.
at some point. But listen, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is kind of back from a bit of a road trip. Is that the advice to give the precarious situation right now to sort of get away from Parliament as things kind of cool off?
Well, it's not so much that he wants to get away from Parliament, although I'm certain he enjoys not being in
I'm sure
Parliament
he
right
does,
now because it is a bit of a car fire. But he's got all these international summits, right? So he's going to Laos for ASEAN. He's going into Germany for a sort of a military meeting. He's going on later to the Commonwealth. So he's packed for the next couple of weeks. The relevance of that is this: the minority parliament is hanging by a thread. Right now, most people don't know, they mercifully don't have to know, that business has ground to a halt because they're having what they call a privilege debate, which means no government business, 6 days they've been filibustering and arguing. I won't even bore you with what it's all about. Just know that not much is happening, right? Obviously, the NDP have withdrawn their formal support for the government. The PM is away. So people are asking questions like, with the PM away and the chaos in the House, when will the government have a cabinet shuffle? Because people are expecting one. How are they going to rejuice their agenda? What's going on? And people are increasingly looking at all this dysfunction and saying prorogation, which means basically you cut the House of Commons out of the picture. You try to come back later. So let's just watch these next couple of weeks unfold. If I was going to make a prediction, and only fools make prediction, ding, 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 fool here, I would say that we're going to get to the beginning of November, that the government's going to watch the U.S. presidential election on the 5th of November. It's going to maybe do a bit of a cabinet shuffle, bring in a fall economic statement, and then prorogue the House. And then it gets interesting because it's like, does the PM stay? Does he go? Does he use a prorogation to unleash a leadership race? Does he stay and does he rejuice his agenda by maybe backing off the carbon tax? What will happen? But watch this space. Right now, the one thing we know for sure is that Parliament is not functioning well.
It is not.
Wow.
No. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting situation there. Turning to Ontario now. The province kicked up a little more dust over Ontario Place, Scott, but it wasn't from cutting down all those trees.
So you got the trees. It's just Ontario Place just hangs around the Ford government's neck like a millstone.
Yeah.
So you got the tree issue last week. They're going to cut down whatever it is, 800 old growth trees. Then the opposition parties all come together to say, listen, we don't care what the financial or legal penalties are. If we come into a position of authority, we're going to rip up this Therme sweetheart deal. So, and just review some of the details, right? So you can't review their lease for 10 years. If you were going to kill it as the government, you would have to give 5 years notice.
What?
You would have to help this private sector organization find a relocation spot. You'd be obligated on the hook to find them a new place. Like, yeah, I'm going to kick you out of your home and I got to find you a new place to live. Oh, and by the way, you got to pay them a full year's rent and all the stuff they'll build, the water park, all of that. Then you, government of Ontario, will be on the hook for the financial costs of demolishing all of that. Plus, you've got to build something like 30 squillion parking spots there. So all of this is just fodder for people who say, why does this organization get a deal like this? Is this a proper use of funds? And you think about the way they paid off the beer companies and all this. It just feels like the Ford government plays fast and loose with these kind of contracts, using the public treasury, advancing its own interests, rewarding its pals. That's where all these arguments go. And it's going to be really interesting because it on the one hand, it hasn't hurt them politically, but it just never goes. It never goes away, Ontario Place. And I just know from personal experience, when you get those issues that hang around like a stone in your shoe, eventually they cause a little bit of blood to be drawn.
Yeah, it's just sad that it's going to be off limits for what, like 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, you go down there and now it's like chain linked up and stuff. It's sad. I used to love to take my kids down there. Now the Doug Ford guys, my buddies who work for Ford go, you took your kids there once a year. Come on, the place has been dying on the vine
what about the kids
for 2
now?
decades.
They grow up and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to go there now because I'm an adult. Maybe
it's going to be a spa.
It's going to be,
it's going to be beautiful. I mean, people like us need pampering.
We sure do. Okay, this next one, a little complicated and tricky to get into, but we're going to try here. City Councillor Michael Thompson, currently involved in a sex assault trial in Bracebridge right now. We saw the details of that in Natalie's report earlier. But also his council duties continue back here just down the street.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is it's complicated for Michael Thompson, obviously, as a sitting councillor in terms of what he decides to do in terms of his conduct of his public responsibilities. It's also complicated for the rest of council.
Yeah.
You know that we got a council meeting coming up later this week. So let's stay away from whether he's guilty or not. Like, we don't know, and, you know, that's what the judicial process will determine. But you do know that everybody on council, starting with the mayor, is going to be asked again this week, especially after these very unseemly, very unpleasant details come out. They're going to get asked, what do you think? Is it like, so shouldn't he be excusing himself? Now, I presume he won't be at council this week with the trial underway, but he has been fulfilling his responsibilities. He has been attending events, and, you know, he has the presumption of innocence, so he's not formally obligated to step away. But often when allegations are this serious, when the suggested crimes are this serious, and when the details are this unpleasant and unseemly, people do take a powder and they back away. It'll be interesting to watch all of council, including the mayor, have basically treated this thing with kid gloves, and they've ducked comment on it. It'll be interesting to see later this week, when this thing's in the headlines and on the news, what the mayor, what fellow councillors have to say about how he should handle himself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting when you contrast this case, and I'm not saying it's anything like what Donald Trump has gone through, but all his kind of legal woes, and he's running for president. Is this just a difference in culture in terms of American and Canadian politics?
No, it's, I mean, I really would hesitate, like you, to draw some sort of direct connection, but there is an observation to be made about the erosion of norms, right? That as a matter of, well, yes, of course, I haven't been found guilty of anything, but as a matter of respect for the office, why don't I just fade into the back a little bit? Like that stuff, all those kinds of norms, right? Any notion of, well, what might the dignified thing be to do here? All that is up in flames these days, right? And that's the politics that we have in 2024.
That is exactly it. That's where we're going to have to leave it this week. Scott, we'll see you back here next week after Thanksgiving. Thanks so much for being here this week.
Thanks,
All right,
Scott.
see you guys.
Appreciate it.